On today's news roundup, Honda really enjoys sticking it to American riders. Harley Davidson is pounding the same old pavement that they have in the past, and Royal Enfield has decided to join the big dogs. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. And if this is your first time here at one of these news roundup videos, I wouldn't be surprised. I've only made one of them before, but this is a news series where I talk about some of the smaller news topics that aren't big enough to get their own video, and I combine 2 or 3 of them into one video to show you what's going on behind the scenes in the motorcycle industry. And we're gonna dive right on in with our first piece of news, which is Honda really seems to enjoy sticking it to the American rider. Why? Because there are so many Hondas or upgrades to Hondas that we do not get here in the United States. And recently, some American riders got hope. Why? Because Honda has decided to bring the CB750, the CB1000 SP, and the NT1100 to Canada. That's right, the bike that everybody is really excited about from Honda, the CB1000 SP, is officially in North America, just not for you. Now, honestly, I'm really not expecting any of these 3 motorcycles to be made available publicly for sale in the United States, because there's a ton of precedent for Honda not bringing bikes to the US that are available in other markets. For example, the CB750 has been out for a couple of years now, and it is still not available in the United States. And the weird thing is, people are super excited to check that bike out because it's a parallel twin from Honda that seems like it's really nice and pokey, that could go head to head with the Aprilia, that could go head to head with the Suzuki, and all of those other parallel twins, but have Honda reliability, but you just can't buy one. Another example, we still have the last generation CBR 600 RR here. There was an update that was available in Europe and other markets, but not here in North America. Technically, the NT1100 is available in the United States, but only as a police bike, so you can't buy one. And then here in the United States, the CB650R and the CBR 650R are now only available in E-clutch models, whereas across the pond, you can get both the normal clutch and the E-clutch version of both motorcycles. They just got rid of the base model here in the States for some reason. I actually asked the folks at Honda when I was at the E-clutch event why they decided to do that, and they didn't really have a great answer. It was a lot of PR stuff, the PR line from Honda, but it was really basically boiling down to, well, I mean, the E-clutch is basically a normal clutch if you don't use the E-clutch, so why have 2 bikes? The funny thing is, here in the United States, you're gonna get a lot more pushback from riders for having something new on your motorcycle. For whatever reason, American riders are really slow to adopt new technology. I think that's generally because the American rider is older than in other markets, but here in the US, I've seen more vocal pushback to the E-clutch than anywhere else. Just go look at the E-clutch video's comment section. And then the biggest piece of precedent we have is Yamaha made the most American naked bike ever in the MT-01. It was like a 1700cc air-cooled pushrod V-twin naked bike that was gigantic. When I rode it, it was the biggest naked bike I've ever ridden in my life, and it was so cool to ride, and it was not made available in the United States. You could get it in Canada, and some people have imported it, but there's like maybe a dozen of them in the US. So what are your options if you want one of these motorcycles from Honda? Well, you could write to Soichiro Honda in heaven, but good luck. The postage is really expensive. Or B, you could decide to import one to the US. That's also a giant pain in the ass. For most folks though, you just have to sit at home and hope that you're gonna end up getting something here in the United States, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
Now, while Honda hasn't deigned to grace the shores of the USA with its CB1000 SP, I've got the next best thing. That's right, a CB1000R that you can win. I'm partnering with Fan of Them to give this bike away to one of you watching this video right now. All you have to do is click the link down below where you can get yourself entered to win. This is a great way for you to support the channel and bring new cool bikes into the garage for us to make content with. You've got until February 27th to get entered to win, so don't miss out.
Speaking of not holding your breath, I wouldn't hold your breath for something new from Harley Davidson. So every year in January, towards the end of January, this year it's on the 23rd, they do a model year launch where they talk about all the new stuff that they're bringing out. And ahead of it, we start to get some leaks. And the folks over at motorcycle.com, Dennis Chung, got himself a leak showing some of the Softails that have been updated and changed for 2025. I've got all the bikes you can expect to see written out here just because it's easier than coming off the dome. So you got the Lowrider S, Lowrider ST, Breakout, Street Bob, Heritage Classic, Fat Boy, and the Fat Boy 35th Anniversary Edition. The Lowrider S and ST are going to get a horsepower bump from 103 to 114 ponies, which is a decent upgrade. They're going to the high output Milwaukee 8, whatever that means. My guess is probably just like slightly boosted compression and maybe a slightly higher RPM limit. Maybe it goes to 6,000 instead of 5,500. The Lowrider S is gonna be lighter too, mercifully, 6.6 pounds, although that's really not gonna make a huge difference because that motorcycle is X amount of pounds. I think it's 730, something like that. And then the Lowrider ST is getting an 8.8 pound reduction. Personally, I think both of those bikes could easily lose 60 pounds if they stopped making everything out of steel and wrought iron, but you know. The funny thing is the Breakout has actually gotten heavier. I don't know where they found another pound, but it's heavier this year. And then I kind of expected this to happen last year, but it's happening this year. The 107 has officially been pruned. You're not gonna find that as the standard engine displacement anymore. Suddenly it's the 114 inch. So expect in the next couple of years to see the 117 be the new base model engine and the 122 being the like fast boy engine. The funny thing is from Harley Davidson, as we've seen a shift to the bigger motors, everybody looks at the old motor like it's really slow. So this goes all the way back to the 103 versus 107. The 107 to the 114. The littler motor always feels really anemic to everybody. So I imagine when you look at 114 to 117, even though they're kind of the same, we're gonna see a bunch of riders be like, you really need the 117 cubic inch motor this year. That being said, if all of these bikes are getting the high output 117 inch motor, then I could actually see that being true because we're looking at, what is that, 11 horsepower more? That matters. That actually does matter on these bikes because they're only making 114. The real bummer is I know Harley Davidson knows how to make power because their big race bike is putting down somewhere in the neighborhood of 165 to 180 horsepower. Admittedly, that's 135 cubic inches, and they are definitely running race gas in that motor. If you've ever been to a King of the Baggers race, you've smelled what they're burning, and that ain't pump gas. But that's besides the point. They could do other things to cause this motor to put out more power. What I'd really love to see Harley Davidson do is just make all of their Milwaukee 8s liquid cooled, because you could still have all of the fin look and liquid cooling. Just look at bikes like the Triumphs or the Street Rod, which also had fins but was liquid cooled. You already have liquid cooling in some of the Milwaukee 8 motors. You have the tri-cooled system where there's a radiator for the liquid cooled heads, then you have oil cooling, and then you have air cooling. The funny thing is Aprilia managed tri-cooling in 2002. The Tuono has radiators, it's got a oil cooler, and technically, because air flows over it, it's air cooled. I am joking a little bit here, but seriously, I think Harley would benefit massively by at least attempting to make one fully liquid cooled motor. Maybe you make one that is a crate motor and it's fully liquid cooled because that's the performance motor, and you see what the performance guys do with it, and then you start letting that trickle down. Maybe in a couple of years, the 122 is liquid cooled, and that's the like performance version. You have the 117 and the 122. The 122 is putting down 140 horsepower because it's liquid cooled. But I don't know, I'm just some dude sitting in an office shouting at a camera. I will be covering Harley Davidson's 2025 model year announcement. That's happening on Thursday the 23rd, so you can expect that video on Sunday the 26th. Sunday the 26th. And then lastly, we got a little bit of news from Royal Enfield here. They are stepping up their 650 motors to a 750. Now, unfortunately, I wouldn't expect a massive bump here. Really what I think we're gonna see is roughly 55 to 60 horsepower versus the 47 horsepower that they have. We're also seeing the new TFT dash that you get on the Himalayan 450, which is that little like tripper dash from Google. You're gonna get that on the upgraded motorcycle. But honestly, I wouldn't expect too much more beyond that. I'd expect we have slightly different suspension just to overcome a little bit more weight on the motorcycle. The motorcycle will also probably be a couple of pounds heavier because the motor is bigger. I'm gonna reserve judgment on this one until we actually see any specs from here, but what I'd really like to see Royal Enfield do is I'd like to see them walk away from the 47 horsepower A2 compliant motors as their base. I'd like to see them expand into bikes that are more aimed less at entry-level riders and more at the experienced or the intermediate rider, because Royal Enfield is an amazing entry point into motorcycling for just about anybody. These bikes look great, they're reliable, they last forever, they're easy to maintain, and again, most importantly, they are cheap. But even though they are cheap, they don't feel cheap. The tanks are really nice, the paint work is great, the Bybri brakes feel good once you put new pads on them because the stock pads feel like ass. But the base bike that you get from Royal Enfield is a lot like a Sportster from Harley Davidson, except way more affordable. And that's all well and good, but I'd like to see them create something like the Thruxton R. Just make one bike that has 1,000 or a 1,200 cc motor that is designed as kind of like a moonshot motorcycle, something for somebody who buys their INT 650 as their starter bike to look at on the showroom floor and be like, yeah, in 2 or 3 years, that's gonna be my bike right there. Because that's what almost every other manufacturer does, right? They create a beginner bike, then they move to an intermediate displacement, then they have the big boy displacement. 300, 600, 1000. That's the progression of old. Now it's closer to like 500, 800, 1000, or 900. Either way, I think Royal Enfield would really benefit from building a bigger, more powerful motor. I wouldn't expect a 750 to be that much more potent. But if this is their way of creating a stepping stone, you've got the 650, which is A2 compliant. You've got the 750, which maybe they can tune to make upwards of 65 or 70 if they really wanted to and slap an oil cooler on there. And then you move on up to a 1000 or a 1200 or an 1100 that's making some real power that also has some really high-end components that somebody who's like, you know what, I'm looking at this really fancy $13,000 Triumph, but then right here next to it is this $10,000 really fancy looking Royal Enfield. You know what, I kind of want that one instead. Royal Enfield kind of has been a disruptor in the industry, and I'd like to see them continue to push that boundary because lately we really haven't seen much from them. Yes, they did the Himalayan 450, which is water-cooled. Cool. Give me something more. Now I understand they are based in India, they're building bikes for an Indian market, but they're a global brand now. Give something for the global rider. And with that, guys, I'm gonna wrap this one up. If you've made it this far, do me a favor, click that subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell. It actually does make a huge difference for the channel. And I am right on the finish line of hitting 150,000 subscribers. So if we could push us over that finish line, I'd really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.